All right, let's dive into some seriously interesting stuff today.
Sounds good.
We're talking about privileged access. You know, those digital keys that control access to all the sensitive data and systems.
Right.
We've got some really great material to work with today.
Yeah.
Including articles about Microsoft Entra Password and a whole bunch of videos from cybersecurity expert Bert Blevins.
Okay.
So we're going to unpack all this information,
Right.
explore the newest identity management tools,
Great.
and even touch on some pretty surprising cloud security threats that you might not know about.
Cool.
I'm excited to get into this.
Me too.
What I find fascinating about this topic is how much it mirrors physical security.
Yeah.
You know, we wouldn't just give the keys to a bank vault to anyone.
Right.
And it's the same with the digital world,
Exactly.
especially with so much sensitive data stored in the cloud these days.
Absolutely.
I used to think of SSO as just a convenience, one less password to remember. But in one of Bert's videos, he talks about how SSO can actually boost security
Okay.
by reducing something called password fatigue.
Right.
I hadn't thought about it that way before.
Yeah. It's an interesting point.
So how does that work?
Well, when people get tired of juggling dozens of passwords,
Yeah,
they often resort to weak or reused passwords,
that makes sense.
which makes them easy targets for attackers. SSO helps eliminate that risk by letting users just log in once
Okay.
and then access a bunch of different applications.
So it's not just about convenience then.
No, not at all.
It's about making security stronger at a really fundamental level.
Yeah, exactly.
And it pairs perfectly with another security measure,
What's that?
multi-factor authentication.
Oh, right. MFA.
Yeah.
It's essential these days.
Now, why does Bert seem so insistent on MFA?
No,
What threats does it protect against that a strong password alone wouldn't?
a strong password by itself just isn't enough anymore.
Okay.
Attackers are really good at stealing or guessing them.
Yeah, that's true.
MFA adds another layer of protection by requiring a second form of verification.
Okay.
So even if someone gets your password,
Yeah.
they can't get into your account without that second factor.
So like a code from an app or a fingerprint scan
Exactly.
or a hardware token.
Right.
So it's not just about making things harder for attackers. It's about making it almost impossible for them to get in.
Pretty much.
Now, speaking of Entra ID,
Yes.
let's talk about how this platform helps organizations secure their digital fortresses.
Okay.
We've mentioned it a few times.
Yeah.
But let's get back to the basics for a sec.
Right.
Entra ID,
Uh-huh.
formerly known as Azure Active Directory,
Right.
essentially acts as the gatekeeper to a whole bunch of Microsoft resources.
Yes. Exactly.
It manages users,
Yeah.
controls access to applications like Microsoft 365 and Azure,
Uh-huh.
and keeps everything secure.
It's really important.
What makes it so effective, though? Are there any specific features that stand out to you?
Definitely.
Like what?
In addition to SSO and MFA,
Yeah.
Entra ID has another really powerful feature.
Okay.
It's called conditional access.
Conditional access.
Yeah.
What is that?
It's all about dynamically adjusting security measures based on the situation.
Interesting.
So the context of each access attempt.
Okay, so give me an example.
Sure.
Okay.
Say you're trying to access sensitive files from a coffee shop Wi-Fi,
Yeah,
which can be risky.
for sure.
Conditional access could step in and say, hold on,
Okay.
let's add some extra verification.
Right, because it seems a bit suspicious.
Exactly.
So it might require a hardware token
It could.
or even block access completely.
Yeah, it all depends on the rules that the organization set up.
That makes a lot of sense.
It's like having a really smart security guard
Yeah,
who can assess every situation and adjust the protection level.
I like that.
That level of granularity is essential these days.
Especially with threats coming from everywhere.
Absolutely.
Now, in addition to the material on Entra ID, you also gave us some videos by Bert Blevins.
Right.
He seems like he knows a lot about cybersecurity.
Oh, he does.
So he focuses on something called PAM,
Yes, privileged access management.
which is all about securing those accounts with elevated privileges.
Right.
You know, those accounts that have access to the crown jewels.
Exactly.
Now, you mentioned that Bert's background gives him a unique perspective. What is it about his experience that makes him such a valuable resource?
Well, he's got a really impressive background.
Okay.
MBA, numerous cybersecurity certifications,
Wow.
experience teaching and leading in a bunch of different tech communities.
So he really knows his stuff.
He does.
Okay, so we know Bert's a reliable source
Yes.
and that PAM focuses on securing high-level access.
Right.
But why is that so important? What kind of damage could happen if these accounts are compromised?
Think of it this way.
Okay.
If privileged accounts are compromised,
Yeah.
they can give attackers the keys to the kingdom.
Oh, wow.
They could access sensitive data, change system configurations,
Oh, wow.
even shut down entire operations.
That's scary.
It is.
It's like giving someone the blueprints and the control panel to your entire digital infrastructure.
That's a great analogy.
So PAM is crucial.
It is.
It's about minimizing the risks
Right.
by putting safeguards in place
Yeah.
and using best practices.
Exactly.
So it's like putting those crown jewels in a vault
Uh-huh.
with security cameras and armed guards 24/7.
Right.
You're not just protecting the assets.
Nope.
You're controlling who has access and watching what they do.
Absolutely.
This is where Bert's insights are so valuable.
Definitely.
He goes deep into PAM
Yeah.
and explores things like just-in-time permissions and password rotation.
He even looks at solutions like Delinia's unlimited admin mode.
Okay, let's break down some of these concepts.
Sure.
What exactly are just-in-time permissions?
So just-in-time permissions,
Yeah.
or JIT,
Uh-huh.
that's a security measure where users only get elevated access when they absolutely need it, and only for a limited time.
So like a temporary P card.
Exactly.
That only works for one door and only for a certain time.
Yes.
Instead of continuous unrestricted access.
Right.
So they only get special access when it's essential for a specific task.
Exactly.
That makes sense from a security standpoint.
It does.
But how does that actually work?
Well, let me give you an example.
Okay.
Bert uses the context of software development.
Okay.
Imagine a developer who needs to access a production server
Uh-huh.
to deploy some new code.
Okay.
With JIT, they would only get the right permissions for as long as the deployment takes.
Okay.
And once that task is done,
Yeah.
the access is revoked.
So even if their account was compromised,
Right.
there's only a very small window of opportunity.
Exactly.
That's a clever way to reduce risk.
It aligns with the principle of least privilege,
Which is?
which states that users should only get the minimum level of access they need to do their jobs.
Oh, I see.
No more, no less.
The JIT permissions are basically putting that into practice,
Pretty much.
especially when you need temporary elevated access.
Right?
It's all about minimizing the attack surface
Yeah,
and reducing potential damage from compromised accounts.
exactly.
Now let's move on to another PM thing,
Okay.
password rotation.
All right.
This sounds pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah.
Change your passwords regularly,
It is.
but is there more to it?
There is.
Yeah.
Bert really emphasizes automated password rotation,
Okay.
especially in a Linux environment.
Which is common in enterprise settings.
Very common.
So instead of manually changing passwords,
Yeah,
which can be easy to forget,
right.
you automate the whole thing.
Exactly.
So passwords are changed without anyone having to do it.
That's the idea.
Is that what Bert recommends?
Yes, he does.
Okay.
In one video, he actually gives step-by-step instructions for how to automate password rotations in Red Hat Linux.
Oh, cool.
It's a popular operating system for businesses,
Yeah.
and he explains it really clearly.
Even for people who aren't Linux experts.
Yeah, even for beginners.
That's really helpful for system administrators.
Absolutely.
It takes the guesswork out of it
Yeah,
and ensures that rotations happen consistently.
and efficiently.
This is another area where Bert's expertise really shines.
Wow, so...
His focus on practical solutions and real-world applications.
Right, he's all about giving people the tools they need.
He doesn't just talk about ideas in theory,
No,
he gives actionable advice
an example
that people can use to improve their security.
Absolutely.
One solution he highlights is Delinia's unlimited admin mode.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting.
This is a new one for me.
Okay.
What is Delinia's unlimited admin mode?
Well, Delinia is a big name in PAM,
Okay.
and their unlimited admin mode.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting approach.
How so?
Instead of giving users permanent elevated privileges,
Uh-huh.
which is a big security risk,
Right.
it only elevates privileges when needed,
Oh,
and for a limited time.
So like a combination of least privilege and JIT permissions.
Yeah.
But on a much bigger scale.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's about giving administrators the control they need
Right.
without expanding their permanent privileges.
Exactly.
This sounds incredibly powerful,
It is.
but it must require a lot of trust in the system.
It does.
How does Delinia make sure it doesn't create new vulnerabilities?
That's a great question.
Well-
Bert actually addresses that in his video.
Oh, okay.
Delinia has put in a lot of safeguards,
Like what?
things like multi-factor authentication,
Okay.
detailed audit trails,
Uh-huh.
and session recording,
Interesting.
so they can monitor everything done with elevated access.
So it's not just about flexibility.
Yeah.
It's about doing it safely.
Right.
With minimal risk.
Exactly.
And this aligns with how cyber threats are changing.
Definitely.
They're becoming more and more sophisticated. So our security needs to keep up.
Absolutely.
Delaney's unlimited admin mode is a great example of that.
I agree.
But we've been talking about big concepts and big companies.
Yeah.
How does this relate to our listener, who might not be a system administrator or a security expert?
That's a good point.
Do the principles of PAM still apply?
They do.
Even though we're not all managing huge networks or dealing with sensitive data all the time.
Yes.
So even if I'm not a cybersecurity expert, I should still think about how to apply these principles to my own digital life.
Exactly.
It's about taking ownership of my own security.
Right.
And that's what we'll talk about more in the next part of our deep dive.
I'm looking forward to it.
Me too. We've covered a lot already, but there's still so much more to discuss.
For sure.
Welcome back. We've been digging into this idea of privileged access management.
Yeah.
And why it's so important for organizations. But in one of Bert Blevins' videos, he talks about OATH. OTP MFA.
Okay.
Sounds like a mouthful.
It does.
But he makes it seem pretty simple.
Yeah, it's not as complicated as it sounds.
And really effective for security.
Absolutely.
So can you break that down for me a bit?
Sure. OATH, OTP, MFA. It stands for One-Time Password Multi-Factor Authentication.
Okay.
Using the OATH Open standard.
Right.
Basically, it means using an app, like on your phone, to generate a unique code that changes all the time.
Interesting.
Every few seconds, usually.
And that code acts as a second layer of verification.
Right, along with your regular password.
So even if someone steals my password, they still can't get in without that code from my app.
Exactly.
And the code keeps changing.
Right. So it's really hard for attackers.
Because they need to have my phone or intercept the code really quickly.
Exactly.
Bert seems to really like authenticator apps.
He does.
What are the advantages of using an app versus other methods? Like SMS codes.
SMS codes are better than nothing.
Okay.
But they can be vulnerable to SIM swapping attacks.
SIM swapping?
Yeah, where attackers trick your mobile carrier into transferring your number to their device.
Oh, wow.
Authenticator apps are generally more secure.
So they're tied to your device.
Right, and they don't rely on the cellular network.
That makes sense.
So for MFA, an authenticator app is usually the best choice.
Simple, effective, and more secure.
Exactly.
And most of them are free.
Yeah, like Google Authenticator or Microsoft Authenticator.
Easy to use.
Very user-friendly.
Okay, so we've talked about MFA, but let's shift gears a bit and talk about some other threats that Bert mentions.
Okay.
I was really intrigued by cloud identity discovery.
Oh, yeah, that's a tricky one.
What is it exactly?
So cloud identity discovery,
Yeah.
it's a technique attackers use to identify and map out cloud services on a system that's already been compromised.
So they're basically doing reconnaissance.
Exactly like a spy mission.
Gathering information about the cloud infrastructure.
Right, trying to figure out what's there and how it works.
So even with strong security,
Yeah.
attackers could still use this to find weaknesses.
That's the problem with cybersecurity.
Yeah.
It's a constant arms race.
You're always trying to stay one step ahead.
Exactly. Attackers are always looking for new ways in.
And cloud identity discovery helps them find potential targets.
Yes, and see how those targets are set up.
So they can exploit any vulnerabilities.
Exactly.
It's like they're putting together a puzzle.
Right, using every little bit of information they can get.
To get a complete picture of the organization's cloud.
And then they plan their attack.
That's pretty unsettling.
It is.
So organizations need to be proactive.
Absolutely.
Constantly monitoring their cloud environment.
Right.
Looking for weak points.
And fixing them.
So you can't just set it up and forget about it.
Nope. You gotta be vigilant.
Always assessing your security.
And adapting your defenses.
That's where cloud security posture management comes in.
CSPM, right.
Bert talks about it as a way to see what's happening in the cloud. And assess the security risks.
It's like your counterintelligence operation.
Oh, I like that.
If cloud identity discovery is their recon, then CSPM is us trying to figure out what they're doing.
And build defenses to stop them.
Exactly.
So what can CSPM tools actually do?
They can do a lot.
Like what?
They can find misconfigured cloud services, like storage buckets that are open to the public, or virtual machines that need security updates.
Oh, right.
They can also spot suspicious activity.
Like what?
unauthorized access attempts or data being stolen.
So they're like security guards for the cloud.
Yeah, constantly patrolling, looking for trouble.
And they can alert you if something's wrong.
Exactly.
That's pretty amazing.
And the best part is it can be automated.
Oh, so your security team doesn't have to do it all manually.
Right, they can focus on the bigger picture.
That makes sense.
CSPM is essential for anyone using the cloud.
Okay, so where does Entra ID fit in?
Yeah.
We talked about it as a key part of Microsoft's cloud security.
Yes.
But how does it work with CSPM?
Entra ID is about managing identities and access,
Okay.
while CSPM is about monitoring and securing the environment itself.
So they work together.
Yes, for a more comprehensive approach.
So Entra ID controls who has access to what.
Right.
And CSPM makes sure the environment is secure.
And finds any vulnerabilities.
They're like two sides of the same coin.
Exactly. You need both for effective cloud security.
It's like building a fortress.
Okay.
Entra ID is the gatekeeper,
Mm-hmm.
controlling who comes in and what they can do.
Okay.
And CSPM is the patrol, making sure the walls are strong.
I like that analogy.
No weak spots for attackers.
Right.
Now, Bert mentions something called just enough administration.
JEA.
What is that all about?
It's a PowerShell security feature.
Okay, it lets you delegate specific tasks.
Right, without giving full admin privileges.
So instead of giving someone full access,
Yeah.
you just give them what they need to do their job.
Exactly, like giving them a specific tool instead of the whole toolbox.
That's another example of least privilege.
It is.
Limiting access to reduce risk.
Absolutely.
So how does JEA actually work?
You create JEA endpoints.
JEA endpoints.
Yes.
What are those?
They define the roles and capabilities that users have,
Oh,
like customized PowerShell consoles.
tailored for specific tasks.
Exactly.
So an example.
Sure. Okay.
You could create an endpoint for managing Windows updates
Uh-huh.
that only lets users run commands related to updates.
So it's like a sandboxed environment.
Right, they can only do what you allow.
And you can control access even further.
Yes, with role-based access control,
RBAC,
you assign users to specific JEA roles
so you can customize permissions.
based on their responsibilities.
It's a very granular approach.
It is very flexible.
JEA is a powerful tool
Yeah.
for organizations that want to improve security.
And enforce least privilege.
For admin tasks,
Right.
it fits in with the other things we've talked about.
Yeah, like JIT permissions and Delinia's unlimited admin mode,
It's all about giving access only when needed.
and only as much as needed.
I'm starting to see the bigger picture here.
Good.
It's about thinking about who needs access and minimizing the risk of misuse. That's the core of good cybersecurity.
Not just technology,
Right.
but understanding the principles
And best practices,
and adapting to the threats.
which are always changing.
This has been a fascinating deep dive.
It has.
I feel like we've just scratched the surface.
Me too.
I'm ready for more.
Well, we'll continue our deep dive in the next part.
Okay,
We'll go even deeper into PAM
great.
with more examples and advice from Bert Blevins.
Sounds good. Welcome back to our deep dive. You know, we're focusing on Entra password and identity management.
Yeah, we've covered so much.
I know, it feels like we've just gone through a whole cybersecurity boot camp in the last couple of parts.
Right, from Entra ID to MFA and then diving deep into PAM.
Plus all those cloud security threats we talked about.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. But Bert Blevins' insights have been super helpful along the way.
Definitely, he has a knack for making these complex topics seem so easy to understand.
And his real-world examples are great.
They really help bring it all home.
Yeah. You know, in one of his videos, Bert says something that really resonated with me.
Oh, what's that?
He said, security is not just about technology, it's about people.
I like that.
And that made me think about how we often get caught up in the tech side of things.
Yeah, like firewalls and encryption and strong passwords.
But we forget about the human element.
The human factor is huge.
Even with all the best security systems. One wrong, click on a phishing email, or a weak password.
And it can all be compromised.
Exactly.
It's like having a top-notch security system for your house,
Yeah,
but leaving the front door wide open.
that's a perfect analogy.
So that's why security awareness training is so important.
So it's about educating people about the risks.
Right, and giving them the knowledge to make smart decisions online.
So instead of just saying, don't click on suspicious links,
You actually explain why those links are dangerous.
And how to spot them.
Exactly.
You're giving them the tools to protect themselves.
Right, it empowers them.
And it's not just about phishing emails.
No, it's about everything.
Password security, social engineering, malware, safe browsing habits.
It's about creating a culture of security.
Where everyone understands their role in protecting information.
And that brings us back to Bert's point.
That security is everyone's responsibility.
Exactly. It's not just IT's problem, it's everyone's problem.
It's a whole new way of thinking about security.
It is.
It's not someone else's problem, it's mine too.
We all need to own it.
And when everyone's on board and taking security seriously,
Yeah.
we're much better equipped to handle those threats.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about some practical steps.
Okay.
What can our listeners do to become more security aware?
Well, we've talked about strong passwords and MFA,
Right, those are essential.
but there's more.
Like what?
Be mindful of what you share online.
Oh, and social media.
Social media is a goldmine for attackers.
I guess I never thought about it that way.
They can learn a lot about you,
Yeah, like your interests, your routines, even your location.
and they can use that to target you.
Or guess your security questions.
Exactly.
So it's not about avoiding social media completely.
No.
It's about being smart about how you use it.
Right. Think before you post.
And that goes for everything you do online.
Definitely.
Be careful with emails and downloads.
Always double check website addresses before you enter any personal information.
It's like being a digital detective.
I love that analogy.
Always be on the lookout for clues.
Don't trust anything blindly.
And if something seems too good to be true,
It probably is.
don't fall for those scams.
Wait.
And if you're ever unsure about something,
Yeah.
don't hesitate to ask for help.
Exactly.
Talk to your IT department or a security expert.
Or report suspicious activity to the authorities.
There are lots of resources out there.
People who can help you stay safe.
Okay, so to wrap things up,
All right.
what are the key takeaways from our deep dive?
Security is a team effort.
Everyone needs to play their part.
Use strong passwords and turn on MFA.
Be cautious and don't trust blindly.
Stay up to date on the latest threats and best practices.
And don't be afraid to ask for help if you need it.
Those are the big ones.
Well, I want to thank you for guiding us through this.
It's been a pleasure.
You've given our listeners so much valuable information.
I hope so.
Knowledge is power.
It is.
And when we take steps to protect ourselves,
We make the digital world a safer place for everyone.
well said. And that brings us to the end of our deep dive.
Time flies.
I hope you've enjoyed our exploration of Entra password and identity management and learned a few things along the way.
Stay safe out there.
And until next time, keep learning and keep exploring.